in the history of Islam, you won't find any alim of any weight or worth in the last 1100 years that did not have one of the madhabs after his name. Imam Nawawi al-Shafi'i, Imam al-Qurtubi al-Maliki, Qadi Iyad al-Maliki, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani al-Shafi'i, Imam al-Tahawi al-Hanafi. I mean, they all followed the madhab. So that has been the tradition. Now, I once asked one of my teachers about a saying that's common, madhabul ammi man yuftihi, the madhab of common people is whoever gives them fatwa. And he said, هذا صحيح من جانب وباطل من جانب آخر. It's sound from one perspective, it's false from another. It's sound in that if you really don't know anything, then if you go to an authority, you just take what they give you. It doesn't matter what it is. But he said it's not sound in that you should learn your deen. And the way that you learn your deen is through these texts. If you want to reinvent the wheel, it's very hard to do that. I mean, if you say, like, I'm going to follow Salat al-Nabi ka'annaka tarahu, the prayer of the Prophet as if you see it, which was written by an Albanian Syrian scholar, Nasiruddin al-Albani, wrote a book called The Prayer of the Prophet as if you see it. Now the idea there is somehow that Imam Malik's prayer was not the prayer of the Prophet, or Imam Hanafi's prayer was not the prayer, but Imam Malik, one of his primary teachers was Nafi', who was the freed slave of Ibn Umar. And Ibn Umar, of all of the Sahaba, is noted to follow the Sunnah more than any other Sahabi. So if Malik's primary teacher took directly from Ibn Umar, who saw the Prophet pray, didn't Malik know how the Prophet prayed? I mean, so if you're going to follow Nasiruddin al-Albani, what you have to understand is you're following his tarjihat. He's picking for you the hadiths that he thinks are the soundest hadith. So you're really following Nasiruddin al-Albani. You're not following the Prophet ﷺ. You're following him in that he's taking from the hadith, but you're taking from his understanding. When you take from this, you're taking from thousands of ulama of a school that happens to be named after the man that codified the methodology used to do those tarjihat, to interpret the hadith. Because each of the schools has their interpretive hermeneutic, their means by which they interpret. The ruku'ah, right? We don't raise our hands again. And even though the hadith is very strong for raising the hands, it's very strong. Both Imam Malik and Abu Hanifa knew the hadith. They both knew the hadith. They knew the strength of the hadith, and yet they rejected the practice. And one of the reasons is Ibn Umar, who relates the hadith, did not do it himself. So people, that's why it's such a mistake to think that you can just follow these hadiths like, Nasiruddin al-Albani's kind of view, I'm going to choose for you these hadiths. It is the strongest hadith, that you do that every single time. There's no doubt that hadith is incredibly strong. 10 of the major Sahaba relate that hadith. But Malik didn't find anybody in Medina from the Tabi'een doing this who lived with 10,000 Sahaba. It was not the practice of the people of Medina. So he said, I'm not going to take a solitary hadith when I'm living with all these people that prayed with the Sahaba, who prayed with the Prophet according to the last period of his prayer, and they didn't do that. And that's Malik's methodology. The hadith are not, if they're not mutawatir, he doesn't take them as just, I'm going to accept the hadith. Because the Prophet, there's different hadiths, there's contradictory hadith, there's hadith that the Prophet did one time to show you that it wasn't makruh. The Prophet ﷺ did certain practices and then he left them. That's all, but it makes life interesting, diversity. The sitting position, saying the final salam once to exit the prayer, so it's pronounced Assalamu alaikum. The Malikis have a slight turning to the right, Assalamu alaikum, and that's it, one time. And I'll get to again, this is the practice of the people of Medina. In Imam Tirmidhi's collection, there's a hadith that Aisha said, if the Prophet left the prayer, he did it with one salam. And Aisha related that hadith. The hadith is not as strong as the hadith that says that he did it with two. In the Sharh of Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, he mentions a sound narration from Zuhri, who's one of the biggest ulama in Medina from the Tabi'een, who studied with countless Sahaba and took hadith from the greatest Sahaba. So Imam Zuhri, who's the teacher of Imam Malik, saw a man once pray in the masjid of the Prophet, and he said Salaam alaikum twice. He went up to him and he said, where'd you get that second salam from? Which shows you they weren't doing it in Medina, right? I mean, the proofs for Malik's prayer are very strong. So he said, where'd you get that prayer from? And he said, I got it from so-and-so from so-and-so from Ibn Mas'ud. He said, I've never heard that. And the man said to him, do you know the whole of all the hadith? He said, no. He said, do you know 2/3? He said, no. He said, do you know half? He said, yes. And so the man said, put it in the half you don't know. So Imam Zuhri laughed, you know. But the truth is, Zuhri's proof is stronger according to the Malikis. Because even though Ibn Mas'ud relates that hadith, are you going to disregard the inherited practice of all of these people for a solitary hadith? That's, you see, you have to understand the way Malik's thinking. And it's not his thinking. This is the school of the people of Medina. He's just the spokesman for the school who becomes the dominant spokesman. This is not his opinion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's makruh. So placing feet together while standing. So the feet should be at shoulder, in line with your shoulders. And then this thing that thank God, when I first became Muslim, it was all over, but it's definitely died down somewhat. This thing of, of putting people's, that's a hadith. It's in Sahih al-Bukhari, and the man that relates it was 8 years old. He was back with the kids, and the Prophet would say to come together, and he said they used to put he was 8 years old. Read the Ibn Hajar's, oh God. It's like people reading hadith and not knowing what this stuff means. Again, it's like 1400 years and everybody was wrong, and suddenly the illuminated Muslims come to explain to us, Ya akhi, don't you know you're supposed to put your, it's insane. It's like a madness. You can't, they drive you crazy, those people. You feel like punching them. Because they're more concerned about their feet than they are about their hearts. Look, and this is another proof for sadr that I'll show you. Because we know that they prayed shoulder to shoulder, right? Hadwal mankib wal mankib. That is a sunnah. Now look, if you put that together with another person, it's ridiculous, first of all. It's just not a sunnah. There's nothing in any of the books that say it. It's a modern bid'ah from somebody misreading a hadith from Nu'man. You see, he was a little boy. He was 8 years old when he recited, and the boys were in the very back, and the Prophet said, hadwa al-mankib bil-mankib, qadam bil-qadam. In other words, line up. So they were probably back there thinking, oh, let's line, and that's how they understood it. They were little kids. So, but if you look now let's both go into qabl. See what it does? It spreads you apart. So the shoulders aren't, so when you're like that,
if I'm like this, it's hard for you to
it's hard to do it, yeah. So when you're like that, the shoulders they're together, literally. But when you do that, it puts you apart. So that's another one of my proofs.
Between the people and put division in the hearts of the...
Yeah, no, that's true. You shouldn't have gaps. That's why people should be up like there.
So it's the shoulders, not the feet.
It's not the feet. Yeah. No, that's something. You know, even Ibn Hajar mentions a riwayah for one that if anybody tried that today, people would get angry, and that was centuries ago. But that hadith which Nu'man ibn Bishr, Bishr ibn Nu'man, Bashir, Nu'man ibn Bashir, he was a young boy who relates that hadith, and he said, we used to do this. That's in Sahih Bukhari. And that's what they based the whole thing on his riwayah. But all I'm saying is, why did none of the imams in the four madhabs, not one of the ulama said that this is mandub? Show me in any madhab. Did you learn Hanafi madhab? Yeah.
No, that's not.
There's nothing. So why did they get that wrong if it's so important? Why did the four imams all miss that one? Why is it in the mandubat to put your feet together? Doesn't that make sense to you? I mean, it would. This is something somebody 20 years ago read that hadith in al-Bukhari and said, oh, people haven't been doing that for 1400 years. We need to revive the sunnah.
In Bukhari also it said that Sahaba would place their shoes by the side of their feet, so that's a proof against having...
Yeah, that's a good point too. Anyway, it's very distracting for people. It's just a sign of somebody who hasn't studied fiqh, or they read the wrong book. But I've never seen any of the ulama that I studied with all condemned it. And Sheikh Ali al-Faqih used to get really angry. He said, what are you guys, wrestlers? Are you wrestling with your Lord? Wallahi, he used to get so upset. He was an imam in Abu Dhabi, beautiful faqih, real faqih, Shafi'i. He used to get really upset. What is that? Stop that. No, I've seen people literally like this, and then like as you move away, they move towards you. Like, leave me alone. And they're like moving. But again, for me, Imam Malik's madhab, and this is what, if you just understand this one piece, I think it really helps. Malik is not reading these hadiths trying to work out what they mean. Like, don't go down like a camel. He was living, he had 600 teachers from the tabi'een. Ulama, not common people. 600 of the tabi'een who studied with Sahaba. So he's looking at how they're praying. They saw the Sahaba praying, they saw the Prophet ﷺ pray. So it's not like Nasiruddin al-Albani is reading hadiths and trying to work out what they mean. The Prophet didn't say, pray like you read in my hadiths. He said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray like you see me pray. So the prayer is taken by talaqqi. It's not taken orally, it's taken visually. You learn from people who learn from people who learn from people, and that's this tradition. It's talaqqi. It's transmission. It's not trying to work it out from the books for yourself. You'll go nuts. Really, you'll go crazy. Because there's contradictory hadiths, there's, I heard, you'll spend the rest of your life just trying to work out. And Imam Malik, a man once came to him, and he was from a group called the Murji'iyah, who were a sect. And Imam Malik knew him that he was. And he said, Ya Aba Abdullah, let's have a debate. And Imam Malik said, why? He said, so we can search for the truth. And Imam Malik said, and if you win, he said, then you follow me.
And he said, and if I win, he said, then I follow you. And he said, what if a third comes and then he debates us and he beats us? And he said, then we follow him. He said, you're going to be on a new religion every day of your life. And he just left. Because always there's going to be somebody who can argue better than you. And that's why if you're going to follow, I said yesterday, don't follow any one man. When you're here in this class, you're not following me. This isn't stuff I made up. I didn't write a book, How to Pray Just Like the Prophet Prayed, by Hamza Yusuf, based on me looking through all the hadiths. I don't care how brilliant of a scholar somebody is. There's no way one man's going to get it right. This is an effort of thousands of the greatest scholars in Islamic history looking with a methodology. They have Malik's methodology, but Malik's methodology is not his methodology. It's the methodology of the ulama he studied from. It's a group of people. So, but they looked at each generation went, they said, I don't agree. And that's why you get all these differences of opinion. That's true. But then there's a normative practice, which is what the majority of scholars agreed on. And like the Sadr. Yes, there are Malikis that say Qadha. Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, he's a strong Maliki. Qadha Iyad, he's a strong Maliki. There are ulama from the Maliki that said Qadha. But the majority of them, the overwhelming majority, said Sadr. And that's what's in the books of the madhab. That the mashhur of the madhab is leaving your hands at your side. So if you do that, there's no problem. That's fine. If you feel more comfortable about that, that's fine. If you want to follow the hadith is there. But there are other hadiths, like I said, that if you read the literature, it's not as clear-cut as it appears. True. Because they're trying to work out. That's why, to me, I just like the action. Is that the hadith, the beauty of Malik's madhab, to me, is the hadith is secondary to the amal. Imam Malik saying, I know there's a lot of hadiths out, and he knew them.
So in his methodology, the amal and everything actually falls.
It comes before the hadith. It's the amal to him of the ulama, not of the common people. He said it's mutawatir. So the only other hadith that will be equivalent is the mutawatir. And if there's a conflict between them, which there's not in his madhab, but if there was, he's still going to go with the amal if it's mutawatir amongst the people of Medina. And that's why I mentioned Abu Hanifa. The hadith of raising the hands throughout the prayer is absolutely 100% sahih. It's one of the strongest hadiths in the collections of hadith. And it's the madhab of Imam Shafi'i. That's what he does. Abu Hanifa knew the hadith and Malik knew the hadith. Neither of them used the hadith. Because Abu Hanifa said he had in his opinion, a stronger riwayah of Ibn Mas'ud, and he said that if you put Ibn Umar and Ibn Mas'ud together, you can't, one is not less than the other in their fiqh. And then Imam Malik said, Ibn Umar relates the hadith, but he didn't practice it himself. And Imam Malik would know that because Nafi' was his teacher who was the Mawla of Ibn Umar. Nafi' was his primary teacher, and Nafi' studied with Ibn Umar. So if Ibn Umar relates the hadith and yet he didn't practice it, Imam Malik said it's clear that he's relating a hadith from amana, but the hadith is not practiced. And that's why Ibn Wahb said, and if you understand this, you'll understand a lot. Ibn Wahb said, and he's one of the great muhaddithun in the history of Islam, he said, I memorized so many hadiths I became confused because there were so many contradictions. And then he said, and thank God for Layth and Malik, because they cleared it up for him. Because he went and Layth and Malik would say, take that, don't take that, take that, don't take. And that it's not that they weren't sahih, it was that there was no action. Because there's different, so you have to think of this in terms of, if everything was clear, like if everything in Islam was just spelled out, what would happen? we wouldn't be having this class. There wouldn't be any debates. There wouldn't be any re-examining these texts, the ijtihad. This forces us to look at all this stuff and think and work these things out, because but what Allah is asking us to do it with is adab. Ikhtidaf. Just to have adab. Not to get angry at people. Not to, to tolerate. It's teaching us. So, and that's what upsets me. It's not that I'm fine with that. It's a sunnah. I don't have any problem with that. But don't tell me this isn't a sunnah, because all you're telling me is you haven't examined the text. You've just read your ulama, who happen to be muta'assibun. They're fanatical about their positions, and they reject the other position. Because if you study the primary text, which I did, to me, I'm like, I actually think Sadr is stronger than others, personally. And I don't think that about all the positions of Malik. There are positions that I think are weaker. There are positions I prefer Abu Hanifa's position. But in this one, I actually think this is a stronger position, because I really believe it was the position of the family of the Prophet ﷺ.